Hello, welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. Again, as a reminder, this podcast exists to help leaders and companies that are looking for innovative solutions to help solve skilled labor shortages and challenges across the country. I'm Tim. I'm joined again with my partner, Brett from Skillwork. Today, we're going to be talking about the concept of essential versus non-essential topic, or at least terms many of us have heard or become familiar with during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're going to look at it both on the professional level as well as a personal level. As part of COVID-19, we've seen a lot of categorization of businesses, services, even individual people as being either considered essential or necessary and or not, or non-essential. And the motivation for this, Brett, it makes a lot of sense. It's, hey, we got to keep critical infrastructure open and going. We got to keep some businesses and services flowing. And so at some point, decisions had to be made about what businesses were considered necessary and critical and others had to be shut down. And it's kind of a tough pill to swallow for a lot of business, depending on what side of that fence they landed on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, as a very overused term, but obviously these are very unique times. And so, we've definitely the concept of essential or critical from a business perspective, were not terms that, prior to March of this year that I don't think most of us thought much of. We kind of considered all work to be essential. Right. And fortunately in the space that we do a lot of our work in, it was in that essential space. So, we were dealing with companies who were being asked to continue to work, to continue to provide, as you say, critical infrastructure, whether that be energy, communication, in our case, primarily food, different agriculture type categories. But these companies got deemed as essential, and obviously we've now all lived through the experience of what that looked like and a lot of the challenges that got created from that in this pandemic. But very, very interesting, fortunately, or unfortunately, I guess more fortunately for us, but, we didn't have the perspective, didn't sit on the side of the table of the person who was being told, hey, your business is non-essential.
Right. Yeah. And, we've got an opportunity to work closely, as you mentioned, Brett, with some of those that were considered essential. And we've talked on previous podcasts about the challenges of bringing people into work and maintaining that. And I think a lot of folks, depending on what their business was, may have lost sight of the fact that a lot of those people in those critical essential workforces were really going to work in the height of unknown uncertainty about COVID. So really, I'd say it's not hyperbole to say they were heroic and going to work and keeping food flowing and services open, hospital workers well documented. So while many have had the benefit of staying safe and isolated at home, these guys and gals have been out at work and some in high risk jobs. So required some really hard decisions that impacted many people and businesses, and some of them, were exposed to high levels of COVID. And fortunately, it looks like many of them are, back and healthy and working again. But it was quite a season we went through, and of course, the non-essential. Then, as you mentioned, Brett, those that were deemed to be not necessary to remain open, and in fact, in some cases, were directed to shut their business down. And I think at the beginning, it seemed like, well, a couple of weeks, everybody would be okay for that. But 2 weeks became 3, became 6, became 2 months, and it really became quite an impacting issue for some of these non-essential businesses. And Brett, we were talking, and just our community here, restaurants, businesses, many that had been open for many decades, were struggling at the prospect of trying to survive and reopen after this thing. And you heard theories around the country of companies that were on the brink of having to permanently shutter their doors. And there's stories of small business owners out there that defied local guidelines and restrictions attempting to reopen their business. So it was really gut wrenching to watch some of that on the news, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's really kind of hard to even fathom, to be honest, in some respects, people that have put their whole, life energy into an organization or a business. We've seen, we've been, I guess, the beneficiary in some cases of not necessarily business owners, but people that worked inside of those businesses, that people got laid off to where they, they're out there now looking for work and looking for those types of things. But yeah, it's hard to fathom, obviously, the idea that somebody's going to make that decision, essential, non-essential. Understand it. I mean, there was a level that they felt it was a necessary step. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but it's still difficult. And now some of these businesses are coming back, and some of them are struggling to come back online. So we just want to encourage everybody out there, and we certainly are, to go frequent these businesses, these shops that have been shut down. Go out of your way to get your goods and services and hire them, get that project going at home, whatever it happens to be. Let's help these guys get back up. They were shut down through no fault of their own, so we hope to see them coming back. And many of those workers that were deemed non-essential, hopefully we and other businesses can look for opportunities to bring them on board and get them back to work as soon as we can. So the essential, non-essential on a business front, that's a pretty clear cut, even though emotional at some level. But Brett, as we were looking at this on a deeper level, on more of a personal level, it struck us that this concept that we all tend to allocate things, people, even businesses, professional colleagues, to categories based on some intrinsic measure of value. The people we meet, friends, family, way we interact, they kind of pass through our personal lens as to whether they have worth in our lives, and as we started talking about essential versus non-essential, it's really struck home to us on a little bit of a more deeper and personal level.
Yeah, no, it did. We took this subject matter, as you said, Tim, and kind of said, let's pause and reflect on this a little further, from the standpoint of, not, obviously COVID, which we've been dealing with now as a country and the world for that matter, internationally, for a season, and now with these most recent protests and riots that we see going on in our country, the need to look deeper and think about, I think every one of us, how we value, the COVID kind of gave us a season to where we really had, you hear people talk about it, I've been home with my family. I've had to really think about the things that are important, and so forth. And now we have the other situation with the riots and what start out as peaceful protests and have turned into some other things at times. But a lot of that is really makes you reflect on value. There's a part of us, Tim, that we can't say yes to everything or everyone. There are people that come in and out of our lives.
Right.
What you and I are suggesting today is by no means to say unless you make time for everybody in your life, you're a bad person. You're judgmental or whatever.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
we can't do that. There has to be. You have to allocate more time, hopefully, to your spouse or your family or these different things, but so it's not a matter of make time for everything. But I do think at times we can all be guilty of placing value unfairly on certain relationships. There's a natural tendency to to uh, to want to spend a little more time with the president of the company, or a little more time with the pastor of your church. The people that are out front. That appear that somehow they have more value than someone else.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And this idea that all people have intrinsic value and there's nobody that has greater or lesser worth. And some of the scenes we've been seeing on TV are gut wrenching. And it really, you really kind of can see, kind of, we've seen a lot of goodness across the country. We've also seen some things that, that we all should take time to reflect on the fact that in God's eyes, and to you and I, Brett, this is where we try to base all of our our moral compass points to this. In God's eyes, there's only one category of people. He sees everybody as essential, and so essential, in fact, that he sent his only son on this radical rescue mission to earth for all mankind, for all of us, and he sees all of us as essential. So I think that this concept of essential versus non-essential we can look at in a business sense, but really on a more personal level. I know I, like most people, tend to have my value system based on things that are important to me. At the lowest level, on a selfish level, where I get some value from it. That's maybe we need to elevate that a little bit and see people for more than what we might get out of it. So hopefully this um, season that we're living through, it's going to give us the opportunity in a good way to think twice about how we categorize someone based on their color, ethnicity, where they live, the job they hold, and try to look at people through the lens of that all people have essential and intrinsic value. It's a challenging issue. We're not going to solve it in a 20-minute business podcast here, but we just think that while we have this platform, it's important for us to share that you take these lessons to heart, and maybe we can recognize and try to live up to that standard that, as God sees all his children, as essential.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well said, Tim. And to your point, I think all of us have to have a voice. We can't. We've heard a lot of people who have stepped up in this most recent season to say, my silence is as I'm as guilty of my silence as the person who is got a loud mouth saying the wrong things, and so I think that is our point is reflect, look in the mirror. If you find yourself, I challenge myself, I'm guilty, at times I see something on the news. I don't know the person, of course. And I see something and I begin to make a value judgment. I somehow justify in my mind. I begin to go down a path like, like I'm like I somehow have this one ability or the right to do that. As you've indicated, in God's eyes, life is life. We are all created equal, and as you say, Tim, we will live on that foundation for as long as this business exists. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking here at our core values. I just spoke to a couple of our new employees about it, and we exist to bring glory and honor to God in everything we do, and that certainly, and most importantly, extends to how we treat people. So hopefully today, this podcast, we want to encourage people. We see goodness in America and goodness in people. And, we do have such a thing as American exceptionalism, and we're going to get through this. And we as a company want to be on the side of good. And we encourage all those who give this a listen to maybe take a look inside and at your own way that you value people, and try to consider everyone as essential at one level or another. So once again, thanks for joining us today on the Skillwork Forum. We appreciate your time, and if you'd like more information about what we do as a company, which is provide skilled labor for manufacturing, construction, transportation, specialty services across the country, and we hold true to these core values. If that's something you're interested in, please reach out to us at skillwork.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.